On the agenda tonight, we're going to be jumping into part 2 of my chat about all things Prince with Maurice Hayes. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to this very special video. It is part 2 of my chat with Maurice Hayes. If you do enjoy this, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, but we will jump straight back into it where we left off.
What was nice about it is, you know, we don't sing as well as Prince. And so when I had his background vocals in my keyboard, I could trigger that. And it was bananas because I had one keyboard dedicated to like samples that I just had a sustain pedal. Because one thing about Prince, man, if you have two hands, they both are getting paid. It's his whole thing. Is like, he'll ask you, hey, Morris, what's that other hand doing over there? Yeah, I just got this one. He said, well, I paid for both of them. So I want both of them doing something. So you figure that out. You got to dance. You got to play two parts. And then you got to also play that other part. So I would step on the sustain pedal, hit this 30-second long sample of strings, just 30 seconds, and just keep my foot on there and play my other two parts. So there's all of these parts that are just coming out of my rig. And I just would reach over there. I had to memorize every note, which could be 20-something keys. I had to memorize on every song where every sample was, so that I could, you know, make sure I triggered the right thing. I remember we were doing David Letterman here. It's a big show that David Letterman used to have. And, you know, Prince didn't like David that much at this point, and thought he was, you know, real funny style, and made fun of his name being changed to a symbol and all of this. So while we were standing, and we rehearsed this thing before we left Minneapolis, we rehearsed it. But we're standing outside the door, 2 minutes to go on. Prince decides, I'm going to change the arrangement now, before we go on. He says, okay, Morris, he said, do you have a gun sample? And I said, well, yeah, you know, we got the standard one we use for stuff. He said, all right, put that on the key. He says, I don't want to shake David's hand when we come off the stage. I want to just leave. And he says, put in the gun sample. And when I do like this, when I get to the end of the song, I'm going to do like this. You shoot the sample. It's going to be a theatrical thing. And he says, we also cut the second verse, go straight to the bridge. And then he says, no mistakes. To ask for no mistakes, which I'm not thinking I'm going to make a mistake anyway. But now you put that in my brains, and I'm like, okay, just got to make sure they're not labeled. So I just got to and thank God I hit the right thing, and it went off. And they did. He got to the end of the song. We played the song called Dolphin, and then he goes, pow, Dolphin, and he falls out, and, you know, and Big Coco comes and get him, and they do this whole thing. And it just was like a testament to like how, like at the last possible second, we're standing at the door getting ready to go in. We've rehearsed all week how we're going to do this thing. And he just changed it on the fly and just said, okay, yeah, we're going to add the sample. So I'm like running through the door, telling my tech, hey, get the sampler up, drag the sample off of this song, put it on the top key, and I'm going to have the gun sample here, pow. And then when I see the cue, I got to hit it on cue. So he goes, pow, and then he's like out. It was crazy. And I'm just sitting there sweating gold tears like, oh, Jesus, you know, but it worked out, man. And that's the kind of stuff we would do. But it was fun because, like I said, I helped usher some of that stuff in. Tommy was doing stuff like that before anybody I know was doing a lot of stuff. So it was kind of bananas, man. But that's what a lot of that was. And then we got to a point where he didn't want to do that anymore. He didn't want to use technology anymore. He wanted to use background. So he would change and morph as he went on, because he's like, yeah, I don't want to do that anymore. It was cool as an experiment. I remember several times, you know, Lenny Kravitz would hang out with us, and he'd tell me, like, Morris, just play your parts on this song right here. And I'd play it, and it was just incredible by myself. Like all of this stuff, there's strings and all of my parts. And Lenny would go like, whoa, that's crazy. Like, Morris, how you doing that? And Prince would say, ancient Chinese secret. You know, he'd just say something like that just because it was so amazing. And then we just got to a point where it hit a zenith of so much of it till he just said enough. Kill the samplers, kill all of that. We're just going to organically play now. We've had our fun with technology, and now everybody's doing it. Now we're going to switch and go over here and do it like this. And just focus. Now we're not going to worry about the set and the video screen. We're just going to put up the music, and we're going to jam, and we're going to play. And nobody could beat them when it came to that kind of stuff. And that's when that for me, on that tape that you demonstrated, where we played, in the background, you could hear me going, woo, woo, because every time he would hit something, man, I'd just be dying. because he hit something cool, and I just be like, God, oh my God, I'm on my keyboards that I can vocally hear me doing that kind of stuff, and Prince knows because he's killing it, man, and that's what I loved about the situation like that. We would always try to outdo each other the next night.
Talking about his multi-instrumental ability, unfortunately here in the UK, I said in my video that you saw about him being marketed or paired with Michael Jackson, and then kind of having this competition and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So his guitar playing, flew under my radar for ages because I was just being told that he was, a pop star or whatever. And then, the older you get and you look into it and then realize that he was pretty much, I think, the closest thing you can get to a true independent artist. But back in the days where you needed, you didn't have the internet, so you needed a record deal, you needed other people to get you to that place where you could record and release an album and do publicity and all that kind of stuff, which you can now do on the internet. But he was, for me, a guy that literally did everything like the current day people who now have the internet. He did it all like that, but without the internet.
Right.
So to kind of take that in, but then when you do take that in and then realize that all of these other things that he was doing, and he played guitar like that.
Okay, so I realized, one, I didn't answer your question previously. Sometimes I can get so much I just ramble. But to answer the first question you asked me about the parts, Prince knew how to play, just like you just said. He knew how to play everything. He wrote all of those parts. So he knew the parts. You couldn't get away with crap with Prince. Like you think you kind of got the chord. He'd be playing his thing and singing, and his antenna would be like, that's an A minor 9, Morris. That's an A minor 9, bro. Like, it would be like, zzz, and if you couldn't, he'd come over and show you on your own instrument. Drums, bass, whichever it was. That's what I did on the record. So here's the line, boom, boom, because it's nuance again. And if you can have the general sound, one of the songs I used to love, every bass player that we had, Sonny and Josh and Ida and all of the different Rhonda, all of the different bass players that I happened to be in over a 20-year span with, I would see him teach them all the same songs because they played it the way they thought it was, and then he played it the way it actually was. And then he'd take the bass from him and say, okay, that line, what you're doing right there, there's a skip in it, boom, 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 and it's that nuance that made it for him. And so he'd help you hear that. And so that was always a thing that what he could do with us, man. And getting back to what you were saying about where he had a time, Prince started doing that at a very young age, where he started being interested in a lot of instrumentation. Prince hated school, man. School was like hell for him, because he got beat up every day by one of our bass players, which is funny. I said, wait a minute, Prince. He told me, he said, this Sonny and Daryl Boudreaux used to beat me up. They used to take turns beat me up at school. I'm like, Sonny, the bass player. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, what? But they just beat me up. And he hated school, man. So every time he'd get out, the only thing he liked about school was basketball. That was the only thing he liked about it. And when he would get out, the first thing he'd do was run and do his musical stuff and go. His dad played piano, so he was around the piano. He learned how to, play guitar. Of course, he learned how to play bass, and then he learned how to play drums. And so it was just this thing that everything that he had this thing he would do. He would study it for a moment. Like even when it was innocuous stuff like bowling. Prince would rent the movie theater and rent bowling alleys, man, just so we could blow off some steam on tour. Rent the whole place and just the band and the crew go in and we bowl, man. And he wouldn't do it. He just stand in the corner, all smoky with smoke coming around and with the shades on, and he wouldn't bowl. Even when everybody else is like, we blue collar, man, we going in, we having fun. And he would just study it. And finally I said, Prince, come on, man. Come on, it's fun, man. Like, and he'd say, okay, the point. I said, man, you shouldn't bowling. You know how it works. You got this ball, you roll it down, it's 10 pins. The whole idea is knock them all down the first time, and then you get another chance to get the rest of them. And then they count funny style. I don't know how to count, but it was just fun. He watched for a few times. Then we got him his own bowl. And, bro, the first time this dude that I saw him play, 5 strikes in a row. 5. And I'm like, what the hell? Like everything this dude does, he just does it, and it's like ping, 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 ping. And I'm like, what is that? And I asked him one day. I said, Prince, what is that? that you can just do that. I used to shoot basketball with him, man. He never misses. He just throw it at the goal and it goes in like Pleasantville, like that movie. And I said, how do you do it? And he said, Morris, everything I do. He said, I see it done in my head first. So all I'm doing at that point is executing. He said, anything I pick it up seriously. I used to play drums with him because he'd be bored sometimes. I just played, but Prince played like that for like hours. I'm not a drummer, bro. My arms start getting tired. I start dropping tempo. He'd be like, Morris, like, bro, like, come on, man. Like, if you don't play, man. Like, play him for real. So that is his attitude, his mentality. Everything that he did, there was no half-assery, and we're just in here having fun. It was deadly serious. He said, Morris, if you're going to do it right. Do it 100, man. You know, play like you mean it. 10 or 10,000, we play the same show. That was just his philosophy. It was his thing. And I asked him one time, brother, I said, Prince, out of all the stuff you do, man, you play bass good enough to be in a band just playing bass. You play guitar, do the same. Everything you do, you could hold a top spot in anybody's band playing that instrument or doing that thing. I said, what are you the best at, man? And he says, at the end of the day, I'm a songwriter. I'm a poet. He says, I hate bad lyrics. He says, I'm a songwriter. And that's what I love the most. And I said, that's what I think I'm the best at. I said, you know what, man, I agree 100%. Because I've listened to all the Prince stuff. I pulled it from the vault, separated the tracks on the console, and just some records he'd find a keyboard like a Fairlight, and that's all he would use. He's like enamored with this keyboard, so he's going through all of the sounds. He's making songs just based on the sounds. He always had these incredible lyrics that you could read it like a story, and you could just check it out, and it's just like it works by itself without any music or without anything. And that made me concur with what he had said about being lyrics and his whole thing with words. And he said, Morris, nobody reads anymore. Nobody reads poetry. Nobody reads these beautiful things. And Prince would read all the time. We'd be on the jet, and Prince had his own library on the jet, man. And you know, the hairdresser would just bring a thick stack of magazines and books and stuff, and he'd just sit there and read, man. And that's how he just keep feeding his mind. And say to me, you know, Morris, we can do them, but they can't do us. You know, that's the kind of stuff that he would say, you know, and it was crazy, man. I had Steve Vai, man, I mean, that's the devil in Crossroads, man. Steve Vai is that's my cat. And Steve brought him a guitar, man. It was like, gave it to me to give to Prince and say, Steve said, Morris, well, he didn't say my name. He just said, dude, this is like one of my 7 strings, and it's like signature, and I want Prince to have it. He's like this, man. Steve Vai. And he's like this, and I give it to Prince. He said, what's this? I said, man, Steve is working in like Studio A, and he told me to just give you this guitar. He said, what is this? I said, it's one of his 7-string guitars. He said, I can do what I need to do with 6. You know, that kind of thing. I'm like, oh my God, it's a gift from a freaking genius, man. Take the gift. It's just like if, you know, freaking Eric Clapton gives you a guitar. You don't have to worry about what it is. Just Eric Clapton gave it to you, brother. Just take it. It's fine. And that kind of thing. But it's always just that D wanting to be the best about everything that he does, man. Everything.
I do sometimes say on my channel that, you know, with the great guitarists of all time, and, you know, Prince would be in that list, which is something that, you know, blows my mind considering all the other stuff that he would do, his ability at playing. But other guitarists just play the guitar. And when I say about, you know, guitarists that play and sing at the same time, sometimes there'll be guys who have learned to sing. So it's almost like you put your guitar to the side for maybe a year or two, and you learn to try and get your vocal cords to hit notes and control your voice and do all these different things. And that now becomes the focus rather than kind of just playing the guitar a lot. So I certainly understand from Steve Vai's standpoint that, yeah, when you see Prince and the kind of level that he got to, when you consider everything else, you think, you know, that is massively impressive, because you do imagine what he would have been had he just played guitar. But then he wouldn't have been the artist, and, you know, I mean, literally the complete artist that, you know, nobody else would, you know, hold a candle to, because they might sing and play the guitar, and they say, "Oh, what about the drums? What about the keys? What about bass? What
Yeah.
about songwriting? What about being a lyricist?" All these different things that he would then put in, and his voice as well. The
Yeah.
fact that it was so unique and he had such range and control of his
Yeah.
voice,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
like that kind of total
Super
package.
high falsetto to super low bass that he could do in a stretch of just a few moments. And the interesting thing about what you were saying, brother, is that I think what made Prince really great in that regard is because he knew of the relationship to those instruments to each other. And so it just gave him a very well-rounded sense of what to do and what not to do and other things. And he would always tell me advice, like he said, Morris, if you want to be a great accompaniment to someone, he says, sing the song while you're playing. And he says, what that'll do is it'll cause you to stay out of your own way. He said, because most people don't sing that well and play at the same time. He said he noticed like B.B. King. B.B. sings and then B.B. plays. It's like, oh, Lucille. And then he do his thing. It's always voice, guitar, voice. Hardly where it just comes on. It's always, and he times it. I want to go down. It's just like everything's got a orchestration and a place to sit in the groove. And what he learned was, having two keyboard players, there was always a thing. Tommy and I had it on program to know that when we get to a song, we know how to divvy it up. If he's going to hit on the one, I'm going to hit on the two. It's like sliding the family stone. It's like, and he tell us like James Brown. They had two drummers, they had two guitar players, and one's line was boom, 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 and it just like everybody's got a part. And so his whole thing was, see, when you get your part, you stay out of his way. He's going to play in this hole. He's going to play. So keys are going to happen here. They're going to happen here. And bass is going to happen here. And everybody got a groove. And he says, when we put it all together, that's like Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls. It's a team now. And we played well, and we win because we play like a team. He said, Morris, I'll shoot the three. You get the rebound. That's the kind of thing that he always looked at music in the same regard. Like, Michael Jordan by himself could score 60 points in a game. They could still lose if did nobody else pick up their part of the game. His whole thing is that Michael is great. I'm going to do what I do. Prince was like, I ain't worried about me. I'm worried about you guys. He said, I'm going to do what I do. Don't worry about my part. I got mine. I got to worry about what you guys are going to do and to make sure that your stuff is together. And once that's happening, man, and once everybody has been tuned in to their role and their part in the orchestration, that's where the magic happens. We'd go see Pete Funk and Parliament, Funkadelic, and it'd be 22 people on stage. And you go, how in the hell is this going to work? It's going to sound like but guess what? Them dudes would lock in, and everybody's playing that line. And when they get together, Prince said it's like a train. You can't stop them. We went to see Marilyn Manson. You see Marilyn Manson. It's like, everything was locked, and see that's his whole thing. When it's together, I don't care what it is, it's going to be powerful because everybody's on the same page. And that was a big thing as to our sound, a big thing that he always looked at. Listen to your bandmates, listen to where he's playing, listen to where he is. Until you get to a place where you can hear everybody, then you're not together, you're not in harmony. He says it's disharmonious. It's not harmonious, and we don't want that. That's a problem. We have to be together. And so you're deadly right, man. And I think a lot of musicians, when I've talked to cats that's coming up, because everybody sounds like the Yellow Jackets now. Everybody's got these crazy things, everybody's these super crazy chords and arrangements and stuff. And it just sometimes you lose the music in there. Everybody's looking for tricks and how to do stuff to make people go, oh, wow, woo. And it's like that. And sometimes you just need to hear what the vocalist is doing. Sometimes you just need it. Don't have to be all of this, and every song's got this thing. We had plenty of songs that we could show our musical prowess and play some crazy stuff that people go like, wow. But that's every now and again. It's like just a sustained barrage of sound is not necessarily the greatest thing. It's like everything is ebb and flow, man. So he have a rock song. We did, like when we did the Super Bowl. that was one of the things. That's why I think we were one of the greatest Super Bowls to ever do it, because he didn't go into it like, I'm gonna play all of my hits. I'm gonna do all. He said, we're gonna make a show. There's all kind of people watching and all kind of people in attendance, you know. So we played all along the Watchtower. You know, we played all of those things and did those different songs. Foo Fighters. We love the Foo Fighters, you know. So we wanted to play Foo Fighters and bring the stuff in there, man. And so that was what made it great, is because it was about balance. It was about the ebb and flow of the show. And then we got a little help from God with the rain on Purple Rain. That don't hurt you at all either, you know. And so these are the types of things that make memorable moments in music, and that people remember, because it's how you plan it out and how you execute it, man. And so it's not, you know, a bunch of notes all over the place all the time and that sort of thing. I'm not even that cat. I mean, I'm not Herbie Hancock. Tommy could do all that stuff. I enjoyed orchestrating my parts and playing my parts. I'm not just sit down at the piano and just like go do the lounge gig and do that guy. I'm not that guy. I play parts like Jimmy Jam, like Jimmy and Terry. You know, Jimmy does what he does and he's a master at it. But you won't see him down doing the jazz gig down at the club. That ain't his vibe. He just do what he do, and that's kind of like I see myself. You know, we have a lot of range, and that's the other thing about Prince. Unlike a lot of guitar players, when, you know, it used to be very frustrating to us when we would see the Guitar Player magazine or Rolling Stone, and Prince would be number 37 down in the list, when I know he would smoke any of those guitar players up at the top. You know, you could ask some of the greatest guitar players. They'll say, I don't know what happened to get Prince down there like that, because he had so much range. Again, he could play rock, he could play R&B, he could play blues, he could play jazz, you know, and hold his own, you know. But people looked over it because he did so much. Just like you noticed, he did so much, so it was very difficult to just like zero in just on his guitar playing or get noticed just for that. Because he just like, I write, produce, arrange, and do all of this on the record. It says produced, lived, arranged, recorded by Prince. You know, and so it's like all of this stuff, and you get lost in the sauce, man. But it just really was such a masterful cat on all of his instruments.
Just bringing to attention the point that you make about kind of playing parts and kind of just playing, you know, what the song needs and what the artist needs, and everyone kind of working as a team. I think a huge part of that is something that actually a lot of people underappreciate when they're learning to play an instrument, and then they might want to be in a band and do it full time, have it as a career, is understanding that your personality is part of what you do. It isn't just,
absolutely,
let me get really good at playing this instrument, and now I'm going to show off because of how good I am, and then the rest of the band will say, well, you're not getting hired because we're playing as a team and you want to be the star. I think from the people that I've spoken to as well on the channel, is anyone who has kind of reached the top and played in huge performances, it's always the same, that leave your ego at the door, because when you get to a particular level, you can't afford to do that anymore. And
that's absolutely, that is huge, and it's one of the best lessons I can give to any band startup when I talk about my time with Prince, and I was there longer than anybody. And I learned one particular thing, and that's exactly what you just said. It's, you know, you can have some of the most masterful players in the world play with you, but if you don't play with people, if you don't learn how to function as an ensemble and as a group, that is useless. You got a cat that can play all kind of stuff. That doesn't call for that in everything. I remember telling my drummer, you know, he was going to do a gig with from Fleetwood Mac, and I told him before. I said, before you go to do this gig, I said, when you Mick Fleetwood, I said, he's playing music. I'm not a drummer, but I know every drum lick in those songs because they're iconic. I said, you can do all of this trickery, John. You can do all of that, but I'm here to tell you, she's gonna want to hear what the record does. All of that other stuff, she hired you because that is that you were impressive in that. But now how you impress her is to play her stuff the way it goes. That you're not on the Prince show now. You know, you're going to be playing for not for Christian McVie, but
Stevie Nicks.
Stevie Nicks. Yeah. I said that's the show you got to play now. And if you're going to play Dreams, You know, I know every drum lick in Dreams. You know, it's like you got to play that like the record. If she wants you to twirl the sticks and do the tornado, then that's fine. You do that, but don't do it. You know. And I remember talking to her. I said, "Hey man, how did that thing go?" "Yeah, I didn't get it, man." I said, "Well," he said, "the band loved me though." I said, "But that's not who you had to impress. You didn't have to impress the band. They're not going to pay your check. She is." So what have we learned here today, young man? What have we learned today? Play the show, the way the show, and play it as they want. And then if you need some extra, they will give you the light. When they do that, do all your little, Prince would say, do all your little tricks. Do all your little tricks. When I give you the light, do it, you know. That's when you turn it on and have your moment and have your thing. So the lesson is just like you said, brother. It's a one thing to like hone your craft to do that, but the other part is when you're going to play with people, is to play with people.
So I'm just going to jump in here to conclude part 2 of the interview with Morris. It will go into a part 3, of course, so make sure that you are subscribed, hit that notification bell to get notified for that final part. I hope you guys did enjoy it. If you did, hit the thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys at the next one. Rock!